Hi, my name is Alejandra Membreno. This presentation is called Addressing Communication Disorders in Culturally Diverse Populations, How Cultural Differences Impact Diagnosis and Treatment. Why is it important to know how to address communication disorders in culturally diverse populations? Well, different cultures communicate differently, and as speech and language disabilities and differences affect people's abilities to communicate. So it's important to know all those differences, or as many as we can. An SLP's and SLPA's job is to work together with their patients and their families to assist with these communication abilities. As of 2021, more than 21% of the U.S. population spoke a language other than English. Cultural factors affecting diagnosis and treatment. These can be influences on beliefs about disability and therapy. This can affect how clients interact with clinicians. These differences, in some cultures, direct eye contact shows respect, while in others, it can be considered disrespectful. Communication rules vary widely across cultures, between dialects and language variations also. And there is also multilingual development patterns that should be taken into consideration. So again, different cultures may have different beliefs about disabilities and therapy. In some Middle Eastern cultures, men do not see women as people of authority. I used to work at a trampoline park, and one day we had a family from one of these cultures come in. It was a group of boys and their dad. The boys were not following the rules and not being safe. They were spoken to multiple times before I called for my female manager. The boys and the father dismissed us. My female manager then had to call a male manager to come speak to them. After the interaction, I asked why she did that, if she was the higher manager, she was the GM. She said that she explained to me that different cultures have different beliefs. It was something I had never experienced before. I imagine that if this family was in a situation where one of the boys needed speech therapy, the father would dismiss it unless a male teacher or male speech therapist brought it to their attention. Another factor that affects diagnosis is the differentiation between a speech disorder and a child who is simply in the process of learning a new language. This is why it's important for SLPs and SLPAs to understand the difference. During language development, it is very common for bilingual children to combine elements of both languages when speaking. They may switch between languages in the same sentence or apply grammar rules from one language to another. One clear way to tell is if the speech mistake is happening in both languages. This can be found out by bringing in an interpreter if needed, although this can bring about its own challenges if it is a language few people in the area speak. In regards to culture, some cultures raise quiet and reserved children, while others raise children to question everything and speak openly with adults. This difference may present as a speech delay if a child is being quiet during an evaluation. So some strategies for culturally responsive therapy are to think about your own biases, be culturally sensitive, build rapport with the family and student, and use dynamic assessments. So the first thing we need to think about is our own biases and put our beliefs into perspective. Then we can learn about the culture in order to be culturally sensitive. We can compile detailed information from family interviews, classroom observations, and language questionnaires. We can also use interpreters or bilingual clinicians when working with families who speak different languages than we do. We can incorporate activities or stories that are culturally relevant and sensitive. Some real-world examples I found. Alexis Lawton tells of a time when she was in her undergrad SLP program and experienced another SLP qualify an African American student for articulation errors when he was simply using AAE. So Miss Lawton said in the article that the SLP marked many mistakes in articulation, but she was surprised because she had heard these words pronounced in that way so many times before. The SLP she was working with did not have an understanding of African American English, so the student unfortunately went to speech therapy even though he didn't need it, and ended up changing the way he spoke. Another example is from Leah Fabiano Smith, PhD, who did research on the misdiagnosis of bilingual students in Tucson, Arizona. She was quoted saying, "Historically, in the field of speech-language pathology, research has been done on monolingual English-speaking children. So all of our assessment measures and all of our treatment approaches have all been done on children that speak English," which we can see why that would be a problem. So in conclusion, I'm going to finish with another quote from that same article by SLP Miss Dominguez, who works at the school that the other SLP was doing research at. She said, "We have to change the way we are evaluating kids. We have to really take into consideration their background, their culture, their experience, and exposure. We really have to look at their language sampling and all of those other functional things to have a more valid picture of the child's skills." And I think this is just super important to keep in mind as we're going to go out there and work with all these different families, because we're going to cross paths with people of different beliefs, people of different cultures. So we just have to make sure that we do keep all of that in mind, like she said, so that we don't go off and misdiagnose someone. It's important that we understand all of that and keep that in mind. Thank you.